afternoon. The time is approximately 1:30 in the afternoon. I'd like to reconvene the Board of County Commissioners meeting. If we can all take our seats. I'd like to ask the board for acceptance of approved publication.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. A statement of public hearing rules and procedures. Our staff will present each item for consideration. With staff's recommendation, the board will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff to present when they're finished. Each applicant will have given an opportunity to speak and to make a presentation. The board will have a chance to ask any questions once the presenter is finished. Members of the public interested in speaking for or against the item, please fill out the yellow speaker form located in the lobby. Indicate the item, whether you're for or against it, place it in the tray or present it to Shaney. Shaney, please raise your hand. Members of the public will be allowed to give comments on once per item. If you have any comments and just want to submit for the record, please fill out the green speaker comment form located in the table in the lobby. And again, indicate the item number and present it to either Shaney or put in the tray. Speakers should state their name and address clearly for the record, and whether they're for or against the item. Speaker will be given 3 minutes. Unless they are an official spokesperson of an HOA or an organization, they'll be given 6 minutes. If a board member has any questions regarding the speaker's comments, an opportunity will be given once the speaker's time has expired. Speakers should limit their comments pertinent to the information regarding the agenda item under consideration or discussion. The clerk is required to obtain all documents, photographs, drawings, etc. So if it's presented to the Board of County Commissioners, be prepared to leave it with the clerk so we can have a precise and accurate record. Once all the speakers are heard, an applicant will be given an opportunity to rebut if necessary. That's not another presentation, just rebut. We'll close public hearing and put the matters in the hands of the Commissioner for discussion, recommendation, or motion. Following a motion or a second, board discussion, and a vote will be taken. Commissioners who do not cast an objecting vote on the consideration will be in support of the motion. Well, the board welcomes all comments from all individuals in interest of the procedures. Florida law requires that the board discussion and quasi-judicial actions is supported by competent, sustainable evidence presented to the board during the public hearing. Competent, sustainable evidence is such evidence that is reasonable in mind and would be adequate in support of the conclusion. There must be factual basis in a record to support the opinion of the testimony of both experts and non-experts witnesses. At this time, anyone who has public quasi-judicial or ex parte communication, please present it to the clerk. I have some information that I want to present that to the clerk, and then we all do that ex parte.
Done.
I have none.
All of mine's been submitted electronically, notwithstanding what was just handed to me on the dais.
Okay. Thank you. Now we'll go into public hearing, quasi-judicial, and item 35 was continued from the July 26 BCC meeting, Langford Villas PD rezone. At this time, we'll hear from staff.
Good afternoon. Joy Giles, Senior Planner for the Planning and Development Division. This item is a request for a rezone. Oh, excuse me, one moment. This item is a request for a rezone from R1 single-family dwelling to PD plan development on 1.16 acres located on the northwest corner of County Road 419 and Langford Drive. The applicant proposes to develop 8 single-family residential lots with a minimum lot size of 3,060 square feet and a minimum lot width of 36 feet for a maximum density of 6.9 dwelling units per net buildable acre. The subject property has a low-density residential future land use designation, which allows for a maximum density of 4 dwelling units per net buildable acre. However, there is an option for a density bonus of up to 7 units per acre with affordable or workforce housing. In compliance with the criteria required for the density bonus, 4 of the 8 proposed units will be offered at a rate that meets the definition of workforce housing under the Seminole County Comprehensive Plan. The subject site is surrounded by R1 single-family dwelling zoning classification, requiring a minimum lot size of 8,400 square feet and a 70-foot width lot. However, the subject site and the immediate surrounding properties are part of an antiquated plat known as North Chuliota, with platted lot sizes of 5,000 square feet with a minimum width of 50 feet. The majority of the platted property on the west side of Langford Drive remains undeveloped. Oops. Pardon me. Here we go. The master development plan shows that 4 lots will access from Langford Drive via 2 shared driveways, and 4 lots will access from Stevens Avenue via 2 shared driveways. The developer will be required to construct a 5-foot wide sidewalk along Langford Drive and Stevens Avenue, adjacent to the property frontage. The site is located within the FGUA utility service area and will be required to connect to public utilities. The proposed plan is consistent with the objectives of the PD zoning classification in that the development will provide a minimum of 25% open space, landscape buffers, a minimum lot size, building setbacks, and a minimum dwelling size. Per policy FLU 10.1 of the Seminole County Comprehensive Plan, a density bonus of up to 7 units per net buildable acre may be provided when a portion of the units are offered as affordable or workforce housing. Also under policy FLU 10.1, developments offering workforce housing may utilize reduced lot sizes and reduced building setbacks. The PD proposes a minimum lot size of 3,006 square feet and a minimum lot width of 36 feet, with a minimum dwelling size of 1,400 square feet, with a commitment of 4 units offered at the rate that meets the the workforce housing definition per Seminole County Comprehensive Plan. Workforce housing is defined as housing attainable to Seminole County working households that earn up to 140% of the area median income. Seminole County further defines workforce housing to include households in which one or more of the wage earners employed by either the private or public sector are compensated for provisions of services essential to Seminole County, including but not limited to teachers, educators, police and fire professionals, government employees, healthcare personnel, and skilled business trade personnel. To ensure that workforce units are not distinguishable from market rate units, all the units will share the same visual characteristics. There we go. Same visual characteristics with varying color palettes. Each unit will offer 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a 2-car garage with side entry. Per policy FLU 10.1, a binding agreement between the developer and Seminole County is required to ensure that the designated workforce housing units are provided to remain available to qualified households when units are sold or change occupancy. The binding agreement is drafted by Community Services and finalized at the time of final plat to be incorporated into the Homeowners Association as well. Staff finds a proposed development to be consistent with the policies of Seminole County and consistent with the Land Development Code. In compliance with the Seminole County community meeting procedures, the applicant conducted a community meeting on April 5th, 2022. The Planning and Zoning Commission Board met on July 6, 2022, and voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed ordinance enacting a rezone from R1 to PD and approve the associated master development plan as requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the board, I want to ask the applicant, is the applicant present?
Good afternoon, Michael Towers, Oakwood Construction and Development, 7951 Via Bonita, Sanford. We're here for questions, no presentation.
Thank you.
Go with staff recommendations.
Okay, we'll now go to the public. Do we have any written requests? No written requests. Anyone in the public would like to speak for this? Please come forward. In the future, if you believe you're going to speak, please fill out the speaker form, because it really slows things down.
Sorry.
And I know this is not your first time.
Yes, sorry. Katrina Shaddix, Geneva, Florida. Did y'all submit when you said ex parte, did that include Lee Patrizzi's comment? Do y'all remember supporting that or submitting that?
I can't answer what everybody else did. I submitted all my ex parte communication.
Okay, I'm going to be speaking. She says, I have chosen to live in Choliota for 28 years for a reason, the rural boundary. This rezone absolutely goes against the land use and the Seminole County rural boundary. Rezoning of this type will set a precedent leading to more requests for rezoning. Townhouses are not compatible with the surrounding area homes. The developer does not have matching funds to build and dedicate properties as affordable for 50 years. The county affordable workforce housing has to be focusing on placing these developments in areas that are close to hospitals where nurses and medical employees work, located near Sunrail, bus services, and walking distances to jobs. And the rent or purchase price will be well over the lower income that affordable housing is meant to help, not in our rural boundary. Lee Patrizzi. But I just wanted to add that recently I've been talking and having a lot of success with developers, that if their developments do get approved, these rezones get approved, and the green space is destroyed, they've agreed to let my organization and Native Plant Society go in and do a bio-blitz where we catalog all of the plants and animals that are currently living on that, and there are a couple bears that frequent that green space. And they let us not only catalog it, but remove the essential plants and animals before their habitat is destroyed. Like I said, at P&Z last week, I had 2 developers agree to let us do that, and we would hope that if you do approve this for Mr. Towers, that he would let us go onto the property and do a bio-blitz and remove those essential plants and animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience would like to speak for or against this? Going to close public comments. Public comments is now closed. Does the applicant feel that they need to make a rebuttal? Applicant has notified me he does not need to make a rebuttal. Thank you. We'll close public comments. Any questions for the staff? We'll ask Commissioner
I have a
Zimbaugh
question
first.
for staff. And I think
We'll go down the list.
I think I know the answer to this. I want to make sure. There's been a statement made that this is in the rural boundary. I was at the hearing when the rural boundary was put in place years ago, and this was quite a heated argument and conversation with then Mr. Henley, who was the chairperson at that time, on where that ultimate rural boundary was going to be drawn. And as I recall, this is outside the rural boundary. Is that true or not true?
That is correct. This is not within the rural boundary.
So this is not development in the rural area?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Herr.
I just wanted to point out there was a question asked about submitting it as ex parte. It didn't need to be submitted as ex parte because Joy and the team had actually included it in the board book. So that statement that was read into the record is already public.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Herr. Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you. It's been stated that 4 of these 8 units are going to be workforce. What will be the difference in price between the 4, since 4 of them are going to be market value? And this could be the question to the developer, but if you know the answer.
So I can't speak to the market value prices. I can tell you for the workforce housing, it would be no more than 140%. The price can be no more than 140% of the area median income. If so, for that, but I can actually give you a number. Let's see. Okay.
For clarification, Commissioner Constantine, were you asking for the price of the home or the income of the individual purchasing the home?
Yeah, I was trying to find the cost of the home
That's what I thought.
itself.
Oh, we won't know that.
No, but I mean, they
For that,
would.
the applicant.
But I think she's trying to answer a question you didn't ask.
No, that's correct. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is the applicant present and willing to address that question? Ms. Rebecca?
I mean, it has to be a certain amount from the 140%, so that's why I was just trying to find out what it would be in this area.
I can give you an example from the table
We
that we have.
cannot hear you.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. The applicants indicated that they don't know the price of the homes currently, but the workforce homes, the workforce housing homes, the income of the person purchasing the home has to be within those limitations, which would be 140% of the area median income. So normally how it is that 30% of the home price, you would not be able to, the home price could not exceed 30% of their income. And the income is limited at 140% AMI, depending on the number of people in the household.
Okay, so this may sound strange. You know, I have a series of questions. This may sound strange,
Go right
but
ahead.
what is, okay, so you have two homes. They're all 8 are identical. So are they going to be different prices?
Correct. So the 4 workforce housing units would have to be at a lower price.
And only those with 140% of the
Area median.
area median value can do it. All right, so
And the purchase price wouldn't be able to exceed 30%.
So in a normal circumstance, this property, which is heavily wooded and I see, lot of wetland, would be available for 4 units, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we're changing it from the zoning of that to PD, so we can have 8 units.
With the-
I mean, that's basically what we're doing. We're changing to a PD. You couldn't do it within the current zoning, so we're
Correct,
changing it to
not
the
within the
zoning to
current zoning.
PD.
The land use
And
allows, sorry, go ahead.
And I understand what the developer is getting, which is 4 additional units, even if it isn't at quote-unquote market value, but we don't know the difference between the 4 homes. We've had these many questions before. What is the county getting?
So the land use, the low-density residential future land use category does allow the density bonus. It allows you to go up to 7 dwelling units per acre with either affordable housing or workforce housing. And the comprehensive plan promotes the addition for workforce housing and actually has policies incentivizing development through those density bonuses for workforce housing. So what the benefit that the county is getting are those units, those workforce housing units.
When you said 7, is it of normal being able to get in that acre?
7 total. So normally you're in LDR, you're allowed to have 4 dwelling units per acre. So if you're having a portion of your project be affordable or workforce housing, then you can go up to 7 dwelling units per acre.
But we're going up to 8 units.
Correct. And 4 of those, they have, but their density is 6.9. They're not exceeding the 7 dwelling units per acre.
And for the record, the median household income in Chiliota is $82,244. So if you want to run the calculations, if that benefits you.
And Ms. Rebecca, what we're getting is the workforce housing element.
$82,244.
What we're getting is, Rebecca, is the workforce housing element,
40%.
which our comp plan is written for, correct?
Correct.
And you could do this wherever you have LDR, if you low-density residential. If you're going to do workforce or affordable housing in the county, you can get additional bonuses on density if you're doing either workforce or affordable housing.
That's correct. And they have to enter into an agreement that those will remain as workforce housing. And it's agreement that goes through our Community Services Department.
And that runs with the land, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Commissioner Zimbaud, and we'll go to Commissioner.
And I think in the presentation I heard, it's going to be incorporated in the HOA documents as well, correct? So anybody that would be purchasing should have an understanding that there's a certain amount of units, or if they're buying a workforce unit, they understand what that is. And likewise, somebody in the same property buying a non-workforce housing would understand that there is workforce housing there.
That I would have to, the second part of your question, I'd have to defer to the applicant, but the workforce housing units will be deed restricted, so anybody that the house is sold to after the initial buyer will also have to meet those limitations for
Right.
income. As far as my understanding is the units will look no different.
Understood.
They'll be the same, and so you wouldn't be able to differentiate between a market unit versus.
Understood, but I think I heard it's going to be incorporated in the HOA documents.
Yeah, that's what Joy.
So if it is, whether you're the owner of the workforce or non-workforce, you both have an assumption of what's what.
True.
Now, you may not be able to differentiate the two, which is great. We don't want to stigmatize somebody that's, buying workforce housing, or young families, whether doctors, nurses, school teachers, et cetera. Just wanted to make sure that that's what we heard. Thank you.
Commissioner Herr?
I'm finding the explanation of workforce housing value to be getting confused up here. So you can earn up to 140% of the median income in what I believe is the MSA, not the town.
Correct.
I believe that the 30% is a reference to the percentage of monthly income, not 30% of 30. It's not, doesn't relate back to the $82,000 that was mentioned here, that now we're doing math over here. I just want to be super clear that we know what we're getting in terms of pricing, so we're not getting confused later on.
Can we have one conversation, Ms. Rebecca?
Yes, sorry.
I'll stop talking. You guys can continue because you guys have the answer. So I'm good with that. And then I do have a question with relation to the elevation pictures, because there's one picture that has more than, what appears to be more than 8 units in it, which I think is just illustrative, but it's in the plan, in the board book. And the last question, I promise, the reference was made to townhouses, but these do not appear to be townhouses.
These are single family.
They're single family, half of which is affordable or attainable, or whatever, workforce. Elevation, no difference. Probably the finishes are different, which would drive to a different price point. And then we need the reference in terms of making sure we understand what the overall prices may look like.
Commissioner
Go ahead.
Lockhart?
Well, I agree with all of the points that Commissioner Herr brought up. On page 591 of our agenda is the table that references the income by household size. And then if you move over to the next several columns, it talks about the rent limit, or mortgage limit
Yes.
that would be applied. So it would be a sliding scale based on the purchaser, not the unit.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted, so we almost asked you a question that you couldn't answer, because it depends, and that's a horrible, answer, but unfortunately, I think that's the answer, is it depends relative to this table.
How many people are in the home? That relates to the income that they could make to still qualify for workforce housing.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Applegate?
I just want to say that when it comes to, I'm having my flashback to HUD days, and this is a fantastic thing going on here. A lot of times the homes may look the same, the developers, and I worked with this stuff all over the country. I used to show pictures of homes that were identical, but inside the home, there were adjustments made that made that house more affordable. And I know all of you worked so hard with staff over the recent few years, making all these changes to waivers and density and impact fees, and what I'm seeing is this is what we've been waiting for. I know the formulas sometimes can be confusing and complicated, but affordable housing, what I've seen lately come through the pike and what's coming through, these are great days for Seminole County.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Otherwise, I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say one thing, and this is not affordable housing, this is workforce housing. All I want to say is, I understand that this applicant has gone through all of the condition, and I am 100% in favor of strategies that we've put together for attainable, affordable, and workforce. 100%. I think it's good. I guess I have a concern that we've talked about PD zoning before. And again, this applicant has gone through and done everything that within the rules that we have today. But as we move forward, my concern is as we switch these to PD, the applicant is getting everything that they would have been able to have under the current zoning, and then getting 4 additional units that they could, sell, and they will make a profit. I bet not as much potentially, but they will make a profit. But I just want to make sure that in every one of these PDs, I want what the county is getting. And you're saying the county is getting 4 workforce units. I respect that. But what I'm saying is, instead of 4 units to sell, they're getting 8 units to sell. And I don't see anything that the county is getting other than, rooftops cost money. And I just wanted to be, as we look forward down the road, if there's something that we can do to adjust this potentially a little bit. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm trying to get my mind around the fact that, what is the county getting? Yes, we're getting 4 more workforce units, but we're getting 8. We're having 8 properties instead of 4 properties that we're going to have to service. And I'm just concerned about it. I'm sorry?
I think it's 6.9, is it not?
8.
It's 8 units, but the density is 6.9.
Yeah, the density's 6.9.
Joy, how would we articulate that for the commissioner? Because what the public is getting is 4 workforce housing units. That's what the public is getting.
Yes, that is correct. The purpose of the PD zoning classification is simply for the smaller lot sizes, because the current zoning has a larger lot size requirement. And so in order to get
Get you, Commissioner.
the density, they have to go to a smaller lot size.
Commissioner Herr?
I think we're getting teachers that live in the neighborhood. We're getting police that live in the neighborhood. We're getting nurses that live in the neighborhood. And right now, they're driving from Volusia County. I think that says it all. The fact that we can get families, young families that can have a path to ownership as opposed to being in rental hell for the rest of their lives, that's what we're getting as a community. So I wholeheartedly support it.
And I concur. This area of Chuliota, as well as my district just to the north of this, is where many of these young families have historically started, because the price of real estate in smaller homes, especially in the Chuliota and Geneva City areas, are much smaller homes, much smaller lots. And the reality is now those homes are selling north of $350,000 that were built in the late 50s on a postage stamp lot. Again, you're driving these folks to areas that require them to take hours away from their families, driving to and from work, number one. In this general area, there are several schools in close proximity, I think 3 within 5 miles. There's a hospital within 6 miles. You're close to the 417, you're close to the 408. I don't know of a better place to have this kind of access for young families to go to work than in this geographic area.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with all of that. I think you all have made and articulated very positive reasons to do what we are doing in affordable, attainable workforce housing. I don't agree with you. And I'm not talking, I guess, specifically about this one. I'm looking and just saying in the future, I can see the potential for, as we have discussed before, misuse of the PD zoning under these classifications. And that's all I'm just putting that out there, that we have to be very careful, both to the development community, our development staff as well as ourselves, just to be watching out for this.
Okay.
I did not talk about this specific.
Let me make a
project.
motion then. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed ordinance enacting a rezone from R1 single-family dwelling to PD plan development, and approve the associated master development plan and development order for 1.16 acres located on the northwest corner of County Road 419 and Langford Drive as presented here today and submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any other conversation, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Mr. Towers, if Ms. Shaddix wants to go in and takes all the plants and the animals, you're happy with that, right?
Okay, at this time, we move to item number 36, small-scale future land use map.
I don't know.
Didn't you hear what you said?
I think that's a private matter.
Hi, good afternoon. Annie Silloway, Senior Planner, Development Services. This request is considered is for a small-scale future land use map amendment from commercial to low-density residential and a rezone from C1 retail commercial to R1 single-family dwelling for one residential lot on approximately 0.1 acres located along Sipes Avenue, approximately 184 feet north of State Road 46. The applicant is requesting a small-scale future land use amendment and rezone in order to develop a single-family residence on the existing parcel. The subject site is required to meet the R1 single-family dwelling zoning by providing a minimum lot size of 8,400 square feet and a 70-foot width lot. The acreage of the lot does not provide an adequate size for a commercial building, retention, buffers, and parking, so the applicant is requesting the rezone to allow for one single-family residence. The subject site is a parcel of record and is within the Packard's first addition to Midway platted in 1917, and the original plat created 40-foot width lots. The subject site does not meet the required lot width and size for the R1 single-family dwelling. But since the subject property is within the Midway Community Development Block Grant Target Area, Policy FLU 4.3 allows the county to consider changes to allow for infill development on existing lots of record in the 1971 tax roll that do not meet the current required lot sizes and widths. In addition, there are a number of single-family homes built on the platted 40-foot width lots. Therefore, the request is consistent with the character of the area. A community meeting for the project was held on June 30th, 2022. Approximately one person attended, and a copy of the minutes and sign-in sheet are attached in your package. A school concurrency letter of determination was provided by the applicant determining that there will be no impact to the student generation of the school concurrency requirements. Staff finds the proposed low-density residential future land use designation in R1 single-family dwelling zoning classification to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the Seminole County Land Development Code. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on August 3rd, 2022, and voted unanimously to recommend the Board of County Commissioners adopt the request for a small-scale land use from commercial to low-density residential and adopt the associated ordinance enacting a rezone from C1 retail commercial to R1 single-family dwelling for the one single-family residential lot on 0.18 acres located along Sipes Avenue, approximately 184 feet north of State Road 46. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed ordinance enacting a small-scale future land use map amendment from commercial to low-density residential and rezone from C1 retail commercial to R1 single-family dwelling for one residential lot on approximately 0.18 acres located along Sipes Avenue, approximately 184 feet north of State Road 46. And that concludes my presentation.
Great. Before we go to the board, is the applicant here who'd like to make a presentation?
Travis Barr with TD Barr Construction, and happy to answer any questions for you guys.
Thank you. This time we go to the public. Any written requests? Anyone in the public would like to either speak for or against this item, please do so at this time. We'll close public comments. Public comments is closed. Since there was none, I don't believe there needs to be a rebuttal. This time we'll go to the board for questionings. Commissioner Herr.
I move to approve as stated.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously. Item number 37, which is Hugh Gardens.
Kew Gardens.
Unnamed right-of-way vacate.
Good Good afternoon again. Annie Silloway, Senior Planner, Development Services. I will be presenting the Kew Gardens right-of-way vacate. This request is to adopt the resolution vacating and abandoning an uncut and unnamed portion of the public right-of-way as recorded in Plat Book 4, page 51 in the public records of Seminole County, Florida, for property located on the south side of Onslow Avenue and east of Audley Street, Oviedo, Florida. The applicant, Gloria Day, petitioned the county to vacate an uncut and unnamed portion of the public right-of-way of the Kew Gardens plat. The subject right-of-way is located between Lot 17 and 18 of the Kew Gardens plat, which are both owned by Gloria Day. The applicant is applying for the right-of-way vacate for the platted alley in order to connect her fence from Lot 17 to Lot 18. This vacate will not cause any other property to be landlocked or deny adjacent neighbors to access to their properties. There are no other parties involved in the right-of-way vacate. The applicant has provided letters of no objection from all applicable utility companies, and Public Works has no objection to the right-of-way vacate. The request complies with the requirements for vacating a right-of-way under Section 35.184 of the Land Development Code and the authority of Sections 336.09 and 336.10 Florida State statutes. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners adopt the resolution vacating and abandoning an uncut and unnamed portion of the public right-of-way as recorded in the Plat Book 4, page 51, in the public records of Seminole County, Florida. I do want to make a statement that Public Works does need to speak regarding a drainage easement for this, and Bill White will speak on that.
For the record, Bill White, Development Review, Public Works. In order just to keep this vacate on this agenda, we had conferred with the applicant. We are looking to get a drainage easement over that exact same area. Just to give you a quick background, when they built the house, they did put a drainage pipe in that area, but it's partially in the easement, partially out. So we're just looking for the easement in case in the future that we would need to update that drainage in that area. Like I mentioned, that we have contacted the applicant. She has no objection. I believe Mrs. Day is here, that she can attest to that. And we would just request that when if you choose to approve this vacate, that you would condition it upon us obtaining that easement before we record it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we hear from the applicant. Is the applicant present? Would like to make a comment?
Gloria Day, 2325 Audley Street, Oviedo.
Any comments?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner?
Ms. Day, but you agree with what Mr. White just indicated?
Yes.
You would accept that drainage easement? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to public input. Do we have any written requests?
We do. Bill Hyde?
Bill, you moved your spot. I was waiting for you over there.
I'm fast. Hi, my name is Bill Hyde, 2379 Audley Street, live right down the street, Oviedo. Anyway, I'm here in support. I have no problem with it. If you've ever looked at the plat, the 1926 plat for that area, it's a total mess. It's an old land boom plat. Y'all were good enough a couple of years ago to take care of one of the right-of-way easements a couple of years ago. We appreciate all that, and so I'm here in support. My only concern was right-of-way easement, just in case someday, I know somebody's going to take our septic tanks away, and you're going to probably want to put water down there. That would be my only concern, but we are in support, and I hope you'll pass this.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, sir.
Anyone else in the public who'd like to speak for or against this before we close public input? Public input is closed. Any questions from the board? Commissioner Zimbauer.
Question for staff. Mr. White. So in the presentation, we heard that the desire was to be able to join the fence to the two property lines once this is vacated. Exactly what kind of easement are you requesting? A maintenance for,
Well, no, it would be just a drainage easement for drainage from the, what we say, from the south side to the north side. So should we end up with a drainage issue in that area, that we would have the ability to go in and either adjust the pipe, provide the pipe if something were to happen to it, and we couldn't get the applicant or the property owner to fix it.
sure, so help me picture this. If the applicant is going to fence across this area that we're being asked to give up, then in the future, how are you going to access that? I assume through her yard?
Well, yeah, we would, well, it would either that or through the existing right-of-way that's there.
But if there's a fence there,
Well,
both
you'd
sides.
have to remove the fence, and if you were to put a pipe in, you'd have to remove the fence and replace it, like in kind.
I think that's a concern I have, is whose expense is that going to fall on? The county's, if we have to go in?
It would be, yeah.
To remove her fence and reinstall the fence?
Yes, if we had to replace that, yes, it would.
Okay.
And again, we would access it from the current
Sure.
right-of-way that's there.
Right, provided that what you needed to access was on the outside of the fence.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioners would like to make a motion to adopt a resolution vacating and abandoning the uncut, unnamed portion of the public right-of-way as recorded in Plat Book 4, page 51 of the Public Records of Seminole County, on condition that prior to filing this, that the applicant would be giving us a drainage easement in this area.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. This time, move on to number 38.
Excuse me. Hi, good afternoon again. Annie Silloway, Senior Planner Development Services. I will be presenting the Oviedo Vet Clinic Small-Scale Future Land Use and PD Rezone. The applicant is requesting a small-scale future land use map amendment from medium-density residential and commercial to planned development, and a rezone from A1 agriculture and C1 retail commercial to PD planned development for a proposed commercial veterinary clinic on approximately 3.49 acres located at the corner of Chapman Road and West State Road 426. The requesting for a small-scale future land use map amendment and rezone in order to develop the northern parcel as a veterinary clinic with 24-hour emergency care for animals, and a medical and dental office on the southern parcel. The applicant is proposing a rezone to PD plan development from the existing A1 agriculture that allows one dwelling unit per net buildable acre and the C1 retail commercial on the northern parcel of the land that allows a maximum floor area ratio of 0.35 for the commercial portion of the property. The intent of the commercial portion of the site is to include permitted uses of neighborhood and community shopping centers, convenience stores, retail sales, and other commercial services in order to retain the existing entitlements of its existing C1 retail commercial zoning. The parcel to the south has existing A1 agriculture zoning uses and a future land use of medium-density residential, which allows for single-family dwelling, plant nurseries, and public and private elementary schools. To keep the uses limited on the southern parcel, the proposed development would limit uses of office, medical, dental, and vet clinic with no 24-hour service. The proposed veterinary clinic and emergency services will be all interior to the building, and there will be no outdoor kennels on site. The applicant is proposing a total maximum floor area ratio of 0.20 for the total site, which is lower than the existing commercial future land use FAR of 0.35. The purpose behind a rezone and future land use amendment to PD plan development is to provide sensitive site design achieved by application of performance standards, such as, but not limited to, lot size, setbacks, buffering, landscaping, hours of operation, lighting, and building heights. A community meeting for this project was held on July 11th, 2022. Approximately 12 people attended, and a copy of the community meeting minutes and the sign-in sheet are in your packet. The property proposes 2 points of access onto Church Street, one access to the north parcel and an access to the south parcel. Church Street does not have improvements programmed into the county 5-year capital improvement program. FDOT has indicated that it will not permit access onto State Road 426. The applicant will be required to provide a cross-access easement between the north and the south parcel, which has been declared in the development order. There is not an existing sidewalk along Church Street. The developer will be required to build a 5-foot sidewalk along Church Street. The applicant proposes a 15-foot buffer along the north and west portions of the site and a 10-foot buffer along the east. Buffer components will be established at final development plan. And 25% common usable open space will be provided for the development of the site. Staff finds the proposed planned development future land use designation and the planned development zoning classification to be consistent with the Seminole County Land Development Code and the Seminole County Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed ordinance enacting a small-scale future land use map amendment from medium-density residential and commercial to planned development, and a rezone from A1 agriculture and C1 retail commercial to PD planned development for a proposed commercial veterinary clinic on approximately 3.49 acres located at the corner of Chapman Road and West State Road 426. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This time we hear from the applicant. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Thank you, Katrina.
Good afternoon, Chair, fellow board members. Brent Spain, 1809 Edgewater Drive, Orlando, Florida. Here to answer any questions, and we're in support of staff's recommendation and the P&Z board's recommendation.
Thank you very much. You just have a seat for a moment. Any written requests, Jenny?
Katrina Shaddix.
And thank you, Ms. Shattuck, for filling out the form.
Sure, no problem. Katrina Shaddix, 1011. Where do I live? Seneca Oaks Trail, Geneva, Florida, 32732. I would just request on this development, as I did on the other one, that we be allowed to go on to the property, do a bio-blitz, catalog all of the flora and fauna, and humanely relocate those plants and animals that can be saved. Thank you.
Any other forms? Seeing no other forms, anyone else in the public would like to speak for or against? For or against, we're going to close public input. Club input's now closed. Does the applicant feel a need to rebut? Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the Board of County Commissioners adopt a proposed ordinance enacting a small-scale future land use map amendment from medium-density residential to commercial to planned development, and adopt the ordinance enacting a rezone from A1 agricultural to C1 retail commercial to PD planned development, and approve the associated development order and master plan for approximately 3.49 acres located on the north corner of Chapman Road and West State Road 426 as submitted here today.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor of the motion, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. I personally would like to take a 5-minute recess. Is there any objections? Okay, take a 5-minute recess.
Sure.
to the public hearing legislatively. We'll now see item number 39. Land Development Code Amendment, Floodplain Management.
Good afternoon. Maya Thanis, planner for the Planning and Development Division, and today I'll be presenting a Land Development Code Amendment to Floodplain Management. This is a request to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 2.3 of the Land Development Code and amending Chapter 30, Part 51 to comply with new community rating system requirements in order to maintain our Class 6 rating through the National Flood Insurance Program, to update standards consistent with the requirements of a new FEMA policy. The effect is countywide. The National Flood Insurance Program uses the community rating system, referred to as CRS, and citizens of communities that exceed the minimum CRS rating gain eligibility for flood insurance discounts. The CRS established minimum prerequisites for communities to achieve certain class ratings in 2020, including a new prerequisite for freeboard for any communities rated Class 8 or better. In order to maintain our class rating 6, Seminole County must modify existing requirements to require all new manufactured homes installed or replaced in special flood hazard areas to be elevated to the base flood elevation plus 1 foot or more to satisfy the prerequisite. Further, the Federal Emergency Management Agency released a new policy which established standards for agricultural structures and accessory structures which are located within the special flood hazard areas. The adoption of regulations that are consistent with the FEMA policy will allow the issuance of permits for qualifying non-elevated, wet, flood-proof accessory structures. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on July 7th, 2020, and voted unanimously to recommend the Board of County Commissioners adopt this ordinance. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners adopt the ordinance amending the floodplain management regulations consistent with the community rating system and in compliance with the requirements of the new FEMA policy. If there's any technical questions, Bill White is here to answer them.
Poor Bill.
Any questions for staff? Okay.
I do have one, Mr. Chairman.
Before we do that, go into detail, I'd like to see if there's any written requests. Anyone in the audience that'd like to speak to the board on this issue? I'm going to close public input. Public input's now closed. Go to the board for questions. Commissioner Zimbauer.
Of course, we've done an economic impact analysis and a private property rights impact analysis on this. And I just wonder, and this may be better for John Dredge and Bill collectively, I know we're in the process of doing basin studies all across the county. Do you suspect this is going to impact any of our ratings related to this matter?
John Judge, Public Works Director, County Engineer. On all the basin study, we will be evaluating the flood map, and we'll be bringing it to the board like we did on the other. And will be up to you if you want to adapt it, to modify it or not.
Which I think means once that's completed,
Right.
we adopt it, this also would be an overlay upon that, correct?
Right, because this in here was to tell you what the building, for example, 1 foot above the 100 years flood elevation, if those flood elevation changes during the study, that will be presented to you, and we will determine at that time you want us to amend it or not.
Okay. And then the final question, we heard a little reference to it earlier today, and actually had a picture put up by one of the speakers. And this often is the case as regulations change and things are sent to us either federally or from a state level. But this idea of now a structure has to be built to a certain level versus what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever that was. I happen to have sat on this board as a citizen maybe 8 years ago, so I have some understanding. What calculations are done based on these changes to protect the adjacent property owners?
Okay, what we do today for the basin, what we have, we try to use the most recent radar. And that's what we do our study for the basin study. And based on that, you have a floodplain. Some of those, the old area is maybe already identified, they are in the, will be in the basin study. Really, nothing you can do about it if it is already structure exists. Now, any development now is done. The engineer of record, they will evaluate the floodplain between them and the engineer, and they make sure in that area, as they are built, it is built to today's standard, which is any construction of building is 1 foot above the 100-year flood and so on.
So in layman's terms, so that we were clear, you could have a development that was built 30 years ago at a certain height, which now would not meet today's height
it could be
requirements. But the guy next to it, or gal, is going to develop, and they have to meet the new requirements, which may be 6 inches, 8 inches, 2 feet above the one that was built 30 years ago. Are you telling us that a calculation is appropriately done, or should be done, by the engineering firm of record doing the development on the new parcel to ensure that runoff does not affect the ones that fell under a 30-year ago requirement?
Yes, you cannot drain and impact your adjacent development. Yes, they have to design it. They have to design it in a way, a drainage. We have a drainage system, retention pond, and also if it is drained to as a system, they'll evaluate the system to make sure the system is capable of taking the runoff.
And what verification process are we doing here at the county to follow up to ensure the actual built matches the plans? And the reason I bring this up, and you're aware of one in my district, in the Winter Springs area, where the developer was supposed to grade the lots at the rear of the building line. Drainage was supposed to go forward, and from behind the building line, it was to go behind the home. When instead, there were several of them actually graded where everything on the property went forward, or everything on the property went rearward, which was contrary to what the plans indicated.
Okay, what you have a 3 type of graded lot. You have A, you have B, and you have C. And if you have an A lot, which everything will go to the front. If you have a B, it'll go half to the front, half to the, and C, it'll go all the way. And they have a cross-section. Now, the engineer, normally they design it, and they have a cross-section on it. The contractors are graded in accordance with the plan. Now, our inspectors, they'll go to the field and they inspect to make sure it is graded in accordance to the plan. Now, sometime after a while, some of the property owners, they fill the yard or the swell, you see it, but that's what the standard really that is any development. You have A, B, C type of lot. Does that answer you?
I think it does. And in this particular case, I think you recall, and I don't know that we've ever addressed it, which is you have this design, it's all considered, the homeowner buys the new home. Now they put a swimming pool in. When they put the swimming pool in, now they've built up to run water away from their swimming pool. That's number 1 problem. Number 2 problem is they put gutters on the homes. Now they collect all the rainwater from the roof and are directing it contrary to where it would typically go if there were no gutters, which we ran into out here on Celery, which was a problem, or on Sipes, I'm sorry. And I don't know that we've ever addressed that for consideration. And I think this is where some of the issues come in from some of our community with the expectation that things were thought out well and considered, when reality is that's not what's happening on site 2 years after everything's built.
Well, it is your side, you're right, but our staff, our inspection, before we issue certificate of occupancy or certificate of completion, they inspected it and according to the plan and as I described it. After a while, some resident try to modify it, and sometimes I put a pool in the easement. And they come in here, they get a variance, and they fill that swell. If you maintain those swell, according to the criteria I described, you should not really have an issue.
Right. And I'm not desiring to tend to legislate gutters and all that. Just trying to understand how those can be captured. If I bought a home, now I'm coming to the county to permit a swimming pool, what consideration is being done or not being done to consider what was originally intended versus what might happen after the swimming pool's put in?
Right.
If anything.
Yeah, and I would say our inspector should be able to tell what type of lot and make sure that the pool does not, this well is still maintained where it's supposed to function. Not, we don't put the pool over this well and block this well.
Right, because I'm not aware of us requiring an engineering drainage on a pool.
No, but our inspector should know.
Sure, I got that.
They should be able to go, and even if they go to the plan.
Understood,
And I
okay.
go to the plan, I say it's type A.
Right.
Every inspector knows type A go to the front.
Right.
And every inspector knows type C, and they know what the typical swell should be, 15 feet, 10 feet. And if they walk in there, and they don't see it,
Right.
with that experience, I should, in my
Okay.
opinion, I should.
I would agree. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Now, we closed public comments.
We did.
There was an individual who wants to speak. Is there any objection for me to reopening public comments?
You're the chairman.
Okay, I'll do it. Come on down. I'll make an exception. We already closed public, but we already closed public comments.
It's a public comment for this item, but
I said I'll make an exception.
Brian, can you go help him?
Please give us your name and address for the record.
Joe Humphreys, 883 Cardinal Point Cove, Sanford, Florida. This is obviously a challenging issue on a county that goes from sand hills to swamp in a matter of minutes. This picture is at the end of Lake Markham, the west end. The area that's marked in red, that's my conservation easement. Right across from there, and that's according to Sarah Hartung's, probably one of the most prolific and productive marshes in the entire county, based on her personal assessment of the area. Next door to that is Markham Landings. A number of you have been out there to visit it. But we talk about flooding issues and stuff. I went through that dealing with the stuff on the islands in southwest Florida. When I spent 2 years on Usapa Island, we went from 35 feet to 0 feet. And trying to figure out where to go with floodwaters and stuff like that as you built was a challenge, especially when you're surrounded by a national aquatic preserve. So then I just came back from North Carolina, where I have bears and trees and lots of hills and stuff, and there and right next door to Asheville, talking about sight lines. I think, again, for those of you that have been over here, that's where this was an issue. And talking about the increase and changes in those elevations, I love LiDAR, it's a great tool, but it doesn't beat being out on the ground. I guess, again, what I see on here and what I actually see on site can be completely different. Anybody that's spent any time in the woods, anybody who's spent any time developing understands that. So we need to make sure that we're doing a follow-up, which was probably one of the biggest challenges here. We're still not sure where the ball got dropped as far as conservation easements are concerned. So I would just ask again that the board consider, again, and I think as Commissioner Constantine alluded to earlier, when we offer DOs, when we do PDs, what are we going to do to make sure that it actually gets done that way? The picture that I showed you earlier on Orange Boulevard, not only does it look bad for the neighbors, it looks bad for the community. I just had builders here from Ohio, and they're driving down the road, and they're like, looking at me like, what the hell is that? And I said, well, I'm not sure. So again, it sends a message as to what kind of quality of development are we doing in the county. So again, flooding is a big issue. We know it came up again when I was in North Carolina. I had one of my friends from the Carisbrook board would have been here today, but they're having meetings today talking about their drainage issues surrounding the soccer fields. And I'll be talking again with them tonight. So again, I appreciate all the work that John does on this stuff. It's a challenge, but again, I think you guys need to make sure what's happening on the ground matches up with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move back out of public input. It is now truly officially closed. Commissioner Lockhart?
So could I ask the county manager or the county attorney to could I ask the county manager or the county attorney to confirm that this item is referencing changes to the code pertaining to manufactured home elevations in flood-prone areas? Or someone from our staff?
The county attorney, the county manager is punted to the county attorney, and I will defer to staff.
Okay, awesome. Whoever you want to punt to. I just want to make sure that because I've heard a lot of discussion back and forth with the Public Works Director and Commissioner Zembauer, and then there was public comment about a development where there are no mobile homes. So I just want to make sure I understand, what is this item that we're actually discussing and approving? What was the modification made?
Okay, for the record, Bill White, Development Review, Public Works. The issue related to the mobile homes is that previously our code allowed for a mobile home to be placed on a property and set at, I think it was a 48-inch level above grade. The new code requirement is that it must be based on a foot above the flood elevation. So it's not that it really changes, other than now you have to go to what is the flood elevation, and then you have to go a foot above that, and that, of course, relates to all the equipment and the frame underneath the mobile homes. That's really the only change to the mobile home.
Okay, so this item that's an amendment to our land development code is related to mobile homes.
Well, what FEMA did is they changed the definition, and so they went to residential structures. So they don't define mobile home specifically. That now falls under residential. Our previous code separated, you could have residential structures, but you could also have mobile homes, so it's really just pulling the mobile home piece out and calling it residential.
Thank you.
And there also is no increase. We've always been at the foot above, and that's staying the same.
Right. Thank you, Bill.
I just want to make sure. I thought it was pretty quick, like yes or no. Like this only applies to if you're putting a mobile home. The change that was made, we've moved the definition over for mobile home, but regular homes on slab construction and regular single-family homes, that has always been above grade.
Always been a foot above, yeah, and doesn't change.
Okay.
Can I get someone up here to acknowledge that, at least make sure that I'm not losing my mind, because I'm hearing all sorts of input that is not relevant to what's actually in front of us.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
And I just want to make sure in that note that we're making sure as the floodplain changes, so does the foot above the floodplain.
The true elevation does change, but it's always going to be a foot above, yes.
Right.
Commissioner Herr?
I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance amending the floodplain management regulations to continue participating in the community rating system consistent with the requirements of FEMA policy 104-008-03.
Second.
A motion, second discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. This time we go to the county manager report.
Well, I reported everything this morning, but I do want to thank Rebecca and her team back there, and the ones that are listening on the second floor. They've been under siege. They're doing great work. And today's an example, this last item, complicated as it might be, just doing great work. I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chipak?
No report from the county attorney at this time.
We'll go to district reports, District 2.
Thank you. Everything is in pretty good shape in District 2. We did have a Whitcomb Road Drainage improvement community meeting. They're still moving through the process. I want to thank staff, Mr. Dredge, and all your people, as well as our consultant for meeting with the community out there. There's still a lot of moving parts, a lot of questions from the community that may or may not be participating in this. So we're doing a lot of due diligence and communication with the community to decide who's going to participate and what improvements, if any, will be ultimately performed. Attended the CFHLA Breakfast Patriots Day Remembrance, remembrance of 9/11. Great speaker there, John La Barbera, which was one of the captains on duty that day when the airplanes and attack happened on 9/11 there in New York. Also recognized that day was Thomas Plum and Chris Schumer from our fire department here, which were local heroes that put their lives in jeopardy on behalf of this community. Outside of that, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. District 4.
Wanted to say specifically to you, Commissioner Delary, great job on the Chamber of Commerce Good Morning Seminole event, where there was great discussion between Universal and Brightline and Sunrail. You did an excellent job, and I think it was a great opportunity to share with at least the folks in that venue the opportunities that the Sunshine Corridor will have for our region. So kudos. I attended a community meeting in Lake Mary last week regarding the West Crystal Lake. And that area of my district is actually, the water runs contiguous from West Crystal Lake under Country Club Road to East Crystal Lake into the East Crystal Lake chain, which of course you all were incredibly supportive of the East Crystal Lake chain MSBU that was recently adopted. And the folks that live on West Crystal Lake have seen the amazing benefits from that lake management program and the investments in time that our staff have been able to make in conjunction with the neighbors. So over a period of time, I think because we use the phrase MSBU somewhat interchangeably with lake management, we refer to them all as MSBUs. The folks in that neighborhood surrounding West Crystal Lake started to talk with our staff about requesting an MSBU. And when we started to actually pull the layers of the onion back, we realized what they were really requesting was lake management services. MSBU being the funding mechanism, the services being what they were wanting to fund. And I think there has been some communication from elected officials in Lake Mary to each of your offices about this project, and I want to recognize Mayor David Mueller is here from the city of Lake Mary.
I didn't see him walk in.
Yeah, the timing was impeccable. It was perfect timing.
Snuck
it was
in.
like on cue, yeah.
He's been watching outside.
Yeah. So between Commissioner Justin York from the city of Lake Mary and Mayor Mueller and their city manager and our team, acting county manager and acting county attorney, there's been a lot of discussion along with the folks in our lake management team about how and if we might be able to offer our lake management services in some capacity through a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding with our cities. This would be the first of its kind MOU of providing these services. We understand it could be a catalyst for additional agreements. So we want to be careful about how we do it, because certainly we have a lot of cities and a lot of lakes. But I just wanted to bring up this incredible opportunity because we know that water bodies, especially that are connected, water doesn't know that it's in the city limits or in the county. So if we can help in some way, shape, or form with an agreement and a funding mechanism to help the city of Lake Mary and their residents, and of course all city residents are county residents as well, it would just be a phenomenal opportunity for us to help this group and help improve water quality, potentially throughout the county for years to come.
Are you asking for consensus?
I'd just like to make a comment if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I totally agree with all your statement and about how we should act together, but I believe we've done this before.
So the reason why this is different is that in other lakes where we have done an MSBU, where there have been cities participating, at least part of the lake was unincorporated.
Okay.
and part of the lake was incorporated. West Crystal is entirely within the incorporated area of the city of Lake Mary.
Now I understand. Thank you. That's why I'm asking the question.
That's the differentiation. And I would say that there are, you get enough lawyers in a room and everyone's going to have a different opinion. Our lawyers have an opinion. The city of Lake Mary's lawyer, that you all have gone back and forth, and I won't characterize those conversations, but the non-lawyer in me says, well, certainly there ought to be a way that we could accomplish their having access to our MSBU program for the funding mechanism as well, but there are opinions that perhaps state statute doesn't allow for that. So
Thank you for that clarification.
yeah, so if we set aside the MSBU piece and only look at the lake management services, it really would be phenomenal to not have each of our cities have to duplicate the administrative layer, have access to our, I'll call, well, they're experts, our scientists, our water quality. I'm looking at Kim Ornberg in the back of the room. She's put together such an amazing team. It could be great. So yes, I'm looking for consensus to give the county manager and the county attorney direction to work with the city of Lake Mary to make this project happen.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Zimbo.
I would agree 100%. I would support this, not only in this matter, but I think whether it's this issue or some other issue, we should be finding a way to work with all 7 cities for the best overall outcome for the county and its residents, regardless of whether they're incorporated or unincorporated. There may be cities, by example, that maybe do some things that we don't, or maybe they do things better than we do, I don't know, or a different method. We should find some pathway or some mechanism to collaborate and make this work cross unincorporated, incorporated boundaries for the best of those individuals. And if it's a legal thing that preempts that from happening, then I guess we'll want a briefing and understanding, and if it's a no, then I'd like to know, how do we change it?
Mr. Applegate?
Yep, thank you. I obviously talked to the mayor some time ago and with Kevin Smith, and we're certainly willing to enter into an interlocal, but as a colleague once said, the law is the law, and the way we can change the laws maybe with the legislature. But we're certainly happy to, if you all, along with the city of Lake Mary, can agree to some funding mechanism outside of an MSBU that pays for our services, we've never objected to that.
So, Mr. Applegate, we can't form an MSBU with the city's consent to do that?
No, not under the statute.
Then I've got a question.
And we'll submit a member, well, I can't speak for the county.
But there's nothing would preclude the city of Lake Mary putting together their own MSBU.
I told the city that if they're willing to pay for it, we'll sign the agreement.
No, understood. Regardless of how, whether they MSTU, MSBU, whatever mechanism that they can use, I got to believe, working with the folks in Lake Mary and here, that we should be able to find a path, some way, shape, or another.
We're trying not to duplicate efforts and have all
Right.
of the cities have to create their own MSBU
Agreed.
divisions and have layers of staff
Commissioner
if we already have them.
So have we interpreted it from the perspective of, if the city creates the MSBU, meaning the taxing mechanism, can we then be the administrator of the tax collections?
Yes, and that's what we've applied.
Right.
Well, I think
wasn't
I
clear
think there's
earlier.
consensus from the board.
Yep.
Figure it out, report back to us. Would the mayor like to say anything? Mayor Mueller? Appreciate you coming down today.
Thank you. David Mueller, Mayor of the City of Lake Mary. It's ironic that just this past Friday, we had all the 7 mayors in our sister cities sitting up here, all in concurrence, how fortunate we are to be in Seminole County. And I really want to thank you. I want to thank you because we are different than the 66 other counties in the state of Florida in the way we get along. And I cannot thank you enough. Commissioner Lockhart, the community loved the presentation you did the other night. And I think what we're simply asking is a way that we could collaborate to make this happen. The reality is that it was such an exceptional success on East Crystal Lake. Our residents on both West Crystal, Big Lake Mary, Little Lake Mary said, how can we do that same thing? And I think right now, first of all, I thank you for the discussion, and we will pledge our support to the county to work with your team in any way that we can form a collaborative partnership that will be in the greater good. We have to step back and realize that the county has resources and expertise that frankly we don't have, but if we can share that together, I think we'll all be better off. And all I can say right now is thank you for the consideration, thank you for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
I have a question, if I may, of Ms. Ornberg.
Go right ahead.
If she's still here.
Unfortunately.
She probably is the best to have this answer. And I'll ask why you're coming down. I know we're under statutory requirements and guidelines out of Tallahassee on lake water quality. Here at the county, are we only in charge of those lakes and unincorporated from that legislative process, separate and apart of the incorporated?
That is correct. Kim Ornberg, Interim Director of Environmental Services. Yes, from a regulatory standpoint for water quality for our water resources through DEP, TMDL's total maximum daily loads, federal regulations. We work together with the cities when we develop the basin management action plans and the restoration or the recovery programs, but we are only responsible for our parts of that or our watersheds that actually discharge into the water body. So we kind of divvy them up when we go through that process.
Thank you. But the fact that we do have lakes that cross boundaries or are in 2 or 3 boundaries, some of them, and that may be the nexus. I mean, I don't know. I mean, in this immediate case, from legislative actions, but, the legislature has given provisions in other areas that allows us to piggyback or join assets in order for the common good of a given area. So I'll look forward to that discussion.
If it's possible, because of course, anytime someone says, especially a lawyer says no, my immediate thought process is how, like Commissioner Zembauer, how do we make that a yes? What's the way to make this work? And my first thought was, if water is flowing from one water body directly into another, that would be a rational nexus. Is there a possibility that we could ask for an Attorney General opinion on this? Would that give clarity, or are you and the City Attorney in Lake Mary pretty confident that the two of you agree on that interpretation?
It comes down to, we've looked at the statute that allows us to do the MSBU, which is the funding source that we use for the lake management program. In that, it has to, under 125, our statutory authority for the county, it has to be county property, or some county property has to be involved. The statute does say that if municipal property is involved, that is permissible to join them in. It is silent on if it is solely municipal property. And since there is a list of what we can do, and it does include what happens if it's partially city and partially county, that is the list. And under statutory interpretation, if there is a list, and that is the list, everything that's not on the list is therefore excluded. And that's the position we've taken. The city attorney has come back and said, well, if it's not specifically prohibited, but yeah, it's not also specifically allowed. So we're in that gray area. There's nothing that prohibits the city from doing a special assessment against their people. It basically comes down to whose tax bill is it going to be on.
Right.
If it's the city tax bill or our tax bill, our position is we don't have the authority to put it on the MSBU and have it on the county tax bill. If the city wants to raise a special assessment for those people and put it on their bill, that's fine. As far as from the technical expertise, we've checked with our departments, and they have the manpower and the time to take on that additional work. If the city wants us to add that into our program, they can act as an administrator of the program. That's not the issue. The issue is the funding source.
Mr. Constantine?
Yes, but Paul, as David will tell you in the legislature, sometimes you can go ahead and do something, and the only thing that's going to stop it is somebody suing. In this case, it doesn't look like anybody would be suing this particular situation.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I agree with your interpretation that if they put in some, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm sorry, but if they put in some examples, and none of those examples included wholly owned by a municipality, that potentially that could be not used. But if the city goes ahead and does their, the special assessment and then contracts with us, I don't think we'll have any problem at all.
Mr. Applegate?
I'll speak as the county manager.
With a little legal background?
With no legal background.
I'll be the Nicole DA of this panel. We only advise.
Yeah.
If you instruct us, thank you for your opinion, we want you to establish an MSBU. We will do that. We'll enter in a local agreement, and we will try to establish an MSBU in Lake Mary, if that's what you want. Then when we do get sued by one property owner who doesn't want to do it, then we're going to pay attorney fees under 57-105 because you didn't follow legal advice. But again, it's a policy decision. We only advise. You all may agree with the city attorney. That's fine. Tell us to do the MSBU. We will do it. We will enter into the interlocal. We will fix the lake. And then we'll worry if we get sued by one property owner who doesn't want to get assessed.
I love the way Mr. Applegate
said that.
And when we get sued by one property owner.
Commissioner Herr, and then we need to move on because I believe we've discussed it quite.
I'd be happy to move on, but
I still am in the middle of my district report.
I know you're in the middle of your district report. You got us here.
We've got till 5:30.
So, I am, in today's environment, thinking that we're not going to be sued is just not a good business decision. And so I'll weigh in on that. And if there's another way to facilitate it that actually puts us in the right side of the law, unspoken, that would probably be a better path. I would also say, because it hasn't been said, and I love Lake Mary. I love the lakes in Lake Mary. I live in Lake Mary, but unincorporated Lake Mary, so I don't want to be ripped apart later on social media for saying this. But I do believe we should be charging the city for the services of our team, and that hasn't been said up here. So I'd like to make sure that we're clear about that, because we
all
just...
agree.
Yeah, I think we assumed that.
Yeah.
No, we didn't say that out loud. We didn't.
Okay.
We said there'd be a memo
I
of
believe we've asked you
understanding.
all to look into it. Report back to us.
Again, it appears that there's no direct legal authority on the matter. I could pursue an attorney general opinion if that is the direction from the board.
I'm okay with that as well.
Well, ironically, the argument's always been, who owns the water that you're going to clean up?
Just put in the contract that
It's not the county, and it's not the city. So arguably, if you get right down to the purest facts, MSBU would be illegal either way.
Just put in
Let's not get into that type of detail.
I'm just saying.
Just put in that the city will pay for all legal
We're going to have
costs.
staff look into it. If you think it'd be prudent to do
I'm just trying to get you a
opinion, please do it. Just give us a legal path. Okay?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Thank you, I appreciate that. The other item that I wanted to bring up for just general knowledge that's been brought to my attention, and it's not in my district, it's actually something that's occurring in Commissioner Herr's district, but the conversation is taking on a little bit of a life of its own, and I have a feeling with our Public Safety Coordinating Council or some other type of public safety entity, we might be able to tackle this or at least get an answer. Apparently, there are some school bus stops in and around the community of Midway that are placed in close relationship to certain offenders. And there's for obvious reasons, a desire to make sure that we don't have our young students in a place that would be inappropriate for them, or walking in front of homes where people may live that are offenders of some type or another. But there has not been a definitive answer given as to why we can't figure this out as a community. So if we could ask staff to get with the sheriff and the school board to try to flesh out why it is that we can't seem to get school bus stops placed in an area that is not within a particular circumference from offenders in that community, that would be great. That's the only community where I'm hearing this is a problem.
Commissioner Herr?
I think the issue is twofold. From what I've heard of the issue is it's related to bus stops and it's related to proximity to the actual school itself, which we can't move. So
No, that's correct.
So that is this is a much bigger issue, but for some reason, it is very well known in the community that this is happening, and it is simply unacceptable.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
So, I hear you, don't disagree. How do you control an offender moving, if you move the bus stop or move whatever to get away from that, how do you prevent that offender from, or another offender from moving in close to the bus stop that you've now relocated? And are we just chasing?
Can we be focused on something that, just point of order from a legal standpoint, we have an ordinance that prohibits certain things. I think there needs to be a conversation between between the legal department and the sheriff's department.
Agreed.
We shouldn't be discussing it here.
And
maybe
well,
the school board.
My bringing it up here was the only way
I'm
for
not-
us to give direction
I'm not
to the county
asking-
manager
That's not
to
my
do
issue.
that.
I just want to make sure that properly noted, and I think the staff, all the staffs need to get together and work on it.
Yeah, and we'll let the sheriff and the school board, those are the first two entities I have to reach out to.
Right.
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 Yep.
I think
those
he's
were the
been,
three
we've been
I said.
notified.
You did.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that update.
You're very welcome. And that is all I have for my report.
Fantastic. And I'll move on to the next, which should be District 3.
And many of you have already talked about all the good work that many of our philanthropic organizations and have done, in the Patriots Day at the CHFLA and the Tunnel to Towers run. So,
We didn't talk about that yet.
well, I will then. And but that happened
Pretty
on
sure
the
I brought
10th.
up my report, but go ahead.
But I did want to also mention that I attended the Orlando International Airport's pre-opening reception for Terminal C, and hopefully when some of the airlines move into that area, it will open up some room for in the other terminals, as well as, again, the cooperation and working with our own airport, that it would, it will be of great value to the whole community and region. Also, on the 15th, tomorrow, or Thursday, the long-awaited opening of the new main entrance of the Wekiva Springs State Park will happen at 10 o'clock. And I know that a lot of folks have been looking forward to that, with all of that happens with Wekiva Springs. And I believe that they are working with you, Mr. Dredge, on some additional right-of-way and such, as they continue to try to improve entrance and availability to the state park. And with that, I'm just going, that's it.
Thank you. District 5.
I'll start with an update with the Orlando Economic Partnership. They just did their year-end meeting, very minor bylaws update. There's a changing of the guard. So huge thank you to Sandy Hostetler, who served for more than 1 year in that leadership position, and congratulations to Tony Jenkins, who's the incoming chair. Congratulations are in order to the staff there, as well as Osceola County government, who won a $50 million a grant for Neo City to bring microchip manufacturing to the state. So good things that are happening down there. Rescue Outreach Mission was awarded the Nonprofit of the Year from the Seminole Chamber. And then with links, we have a couple of updates. I'll start with the same news that you've heard here, and that is that Links has had to do a salary adjustment similar to what we have done that is outside of what was anticipated in the budget. They're funding it through, and it was all very reasonable in order to keep positions filled and keep the buses moving. They're funding it through stabilization funds that will spend down over the next 3 to 4 years, but there will be an impact to the budget of partnerships. At this point, it's roughly half of the impact of the normal increase, which let's call it $325,000 impact to budget several years from now. But I don't want to be told I didn't tell you. So you guys all know I don't usually go into this level of detail, but it's a budgetary impact, and it will come up in the future. They have, however, been awarded $16 million for electric buses from a federal urban grant, and there were some state grants as well. So some really good stuff that's happening in that area. And then lastly, I'll end my report wishing Godspeed to the Seminole County firefighters that are deployed in California: Kevin Beavers, Josh Everston, Justin Esteras, and Grayson Durant. God bless them.
Amen. Okay, under my report, I have a couple items. Earlier today, we talked about transit area development. We talked about Sunrail. I asked David Johnson to do a half-mile radius around each one of those train stations. I want to pass that out. And it's year by year, what's the increase of the TIF for those areas. I also received from the city of Sanford, they are going after the Iraq-Afghanistan War Memorial of the state of Florida. I want to hand this out. And they're working with various organizations. And they're not asking for any money, because the organization that is for Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial will pay for it, but they're asking for a letter of support so that would help position them with this War Memorial. And I'd like to see if there's consensus for us to write a letter of support. Is there consensus?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Great. Just want to make sure. I've been talking to DOT as well as our staff, but mostly DOT and Metro Plan Orlando, regarding Waze and Google Maps, because there's more and more people being routed through major roads to side streets and communities. Go figure. And we're trying to help prevent that. And I want to make sure that everybody's aware that we're talking to various organizations to do that, because I think that's wrong. And I think that they're putting additional wear and tear on our roads, especially the cut-through traffic aspect of it. People move into neighborhoods with the understanding that it's a nice, quiet neighborhood, and all of a sudden they have all this additional traffic because Waze and Google is sending them down their streets. So I wanted to make sure that once I get some more information from DOT and Metro Plan Orlando, I'll be more than happy to send that to you. I want to thank staff. We had Leadership Seminoles here last Friday, and I was asked to speak to them to welcome them. I want to thank our staff for helping me put together all the information regarding that. Phenomenal organization, and they really enjoyed not just what was presented to them, but the whole leadership team of this county. And a lot of people walked away knowing and understanding a lot more of Seminole County and the great leadership that our department heads and the people that work here. So I wanted to thank our staff for doing that as well. On the same note, Thursday of last week, we had Moody's and Standard & Poor's here, to do our rating for our bond for 5 points, the $170 million. Lori Bailey Brown, who sits in the back there, her team helped put that together with our financial advisor. Brian Applegate was there, Tricia Johnson, Melanie Kuntz was there, various other staff people. And I will tell you, in these presentations, both the morning, which was S&P, and the afternoon was Moody's, they walked away not just understanding what makes Seminole County a great place to live, work, and play, but why we do things right and why we are truly Florida's natural choice. In fact, S&P, I believe, I can be speaking prematurely, we may be getting an increase in our bond rating, which I think goes a long way to show you not just the leadership of our staff, but the wonderful things that our staff's been doing over these past couple of years. I'll also tell you that they're asking some very blunt questions about the county regarding the infrastructure, regarding the reserves and the financial aspects of it, and they're asking very pointed questions. And to see the way our staff presented those answers to a satisfactory standpoint of those two agencies is quite an accomplishment. I wanted to thank all of them for their ability to articulate the financial aspects of this county and why this county is such a great place. The fire chief was there, emergency management people were there, IT was there talking about cybersecurity. We won't go into great details on that for obvious reasons. And they were very impressed of what this county does. Normally, this county goes to New York to do that rating agency interview, but to have them come down here and to see it firsthand was the right thing to do, and I'm very thankful that our financial advisor, Jay, recommended it, and it was very inspiring to see what this county is about from a financial standpoint. And I wanted to make sure you were all aware of that and thank our staff for doing that. Didn't know if anybody had any questions about that. Commissioner Constantine?
Other than I heard that the staff and yourself did a great
That was
job.
mostly
So I
staff.
just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we appreciate it.
Staff did a phenomenal job.
I was
Mr.
going to
Applegate?
say it, but Commissioner Constantine beat me to it. Commissioner, you did a fantastic job presenting the county's story, and it was a great team effort. It really was.
It was a team effort.
Yes.
So, there was an issue last week where there was a citizen that came to the county services building looking for a commissioner, and I know I wasn't here, and I know some other commissioners weren't here. And I say that because I found out that if a commissioner's not here and people come in, the people on the first floor basically, well, the commissioner's not here because you don't have an appointment. He was like, well, yes. And they just give the citizen a business card and ask them to contact us. And I think that is wrong because we always believe we have not just an open door policy for many aspects of it, but we want to make sure that we're able to help all our citizens no matter what happens. And I just want to make, first of all, you aware of that, because the citizen had to go back into their car to get their cell phone to call my office, and wanted to try to make an appointment. But I think we have aides. I think the aides are here to help us when we're not here. Many of them here from 8 to 5 or whenever they are here. If they're not in their office, they're doing other things for this county. And I want to bring this to your attention to make sure that if people do come to the county, that they're not just giving a business card if they don't have an appointment to say, call, make an appointment. They should be helped at all times, and I think that's something that this county has always prided itself on. There was a disconnect, and I did speak to Mr. Applegate and staff about it, and I was assured that that disconnect won't happen again, so thank you very much, Mr. Applegate. But I wanted to make sure the board was aware of it.
Mr. Delar.
Yes. Sorry, I wasn't trying to ignore you.
That's okay. So When we put the additional security in place, it was to help some of the concerns of people just coming up to the building and walking into offices, and sometimes our aides would walk into the office and there would be a random citizen sitting there waiting for them. And so there's a balance between an open door policy and having some safety and security in place. And if the county manager has a practice in place, we know that the folks who sit down at the front desk are typically interns with the sheriff's office, and they rotate. They're not always the same person. So it may be appropriate to put something in place where there's a communication with whoever their supervisor is to let them know what our expectation is. Certainly, reaching out and calling this receptionist upstairs would be appropriate, or calling any one of our offices would be appropriate. But I appreciate being alerted to the situation, but I'm sure that the county manager has a way to help people feel welcomed without compromising security.
I wasn't trying to compromise security, but if people are here and want to see or try to get help, we should do everything as possible to try to help that individual. And that's the reason for bringing it up. Commissioner Herr, then Commissioner Zimbow.
So this has bothered me since I walked in the first day, but in the grand scheme of things to work on, it wasn't on the list. By my view, based on the year of my birth, which lines up with most of yours, the kids that work that front desk, they have me turned off, so maybe the kids that work that front desk are not necessarily the best impression in terms of customer service to our citizens. And that's not their issue. They're interns, and they're put in a situation where they're literally sitting by themselves all day, slumped in a chair, not necessarily giving the impression that we want. And so I really do think we need to rethink that impact of that customer service to the operation. And I can tell you that my family has had incidents with that operation of not being allowed to go up and get my whatever I was sending them to the office to pick up. They just get blocked. So I really do think, I don't necessarily want to add to staff. I don't know what the solution is, but we really do have to think about how we face out to the community, and that is a big part of it. That's like a bank teller.
Yep. Commissioner Zimbow?
Agree 100%. Again, I'm not sure what the answer is, but when someone usually shows up here at the county, they're looking for assistance or help or advice, and the individuals, again, no fault of theirs, if somebody comes in and says, I have a problem with drainage in front of my house, the person at the front has no idea what that means. They have no idea where to send them, who to call. And so I think we should totally look at that from a customer service aspect. Not that individual is going to have all the answers, but at least some training of when somebody comes in with X issue, it falls into a certain category, and who best to direct that to. In my opinion, if it's a commissioner that they want to get to, in most cases, when they get to my office, it often is, I just need to get them to the roads department or, engineering or whoever, but they use that as the source or resource. And so even if it means, if I'm out of the office, maybe at a board meeting in another area of the state, and my aide happens to be out, I have no problem routing them to another aide on the third floor that should and would have all the same information to help direct where that individual should contact or who to speak to get help.
Commissioner Lockwood?
So back in the day, and I don't know how many folks are sitting in this room who will remember this, but part of the building department waiting area used to be the Customer Resource Center. And we had, I see head nods in the back, and we had an employee whose job was to exactly that. When someone walked in off the street and they needed something, they went right to the Customer Resource Center. And because not everything has to be directed from a commission office, right? It's just that people get frustrated and they don't know where else to go, so they
Right.
wind up calling their commissioner or showing up. And again, I'm not suggesting that we add another employee, but that concept was clearly something that worked at the time, and it went away during the downturn. And so it might be worth rethinking, maybe.
Well,
Do you remember that?
I do remember that,
Okay.
and I'm pretty sure that our county staff, and talking to Mr. Applegate and Tricia Johnson and Melanie Coombs, they'll solve this issue, but I wanted to make sure that I brought it to everyone's attention.
We're working on it, and all of you have brought up valid points. Commissioner Delary and I had a long conversation about this.
This was yesterday.
It seemed like a long time ago. But I told him, I know what it's like to be yanked out of a courtroom under protective security and find out that someone picked my wife up and put her in a police station for protective security when there was a viable death threat against me. I feel responsible for every employee in this building, including all of you and your aides. So we will try and find a balance of what needs to be done, because it is not right for a citizen to come in and not get an answer or have to go out to the car to make a call.
And the only reason why the person was persistent enough to go to the car and get the cell phone, because she used to work here.
Yeah. So I will work with each of you and get your thoughts individually as we work through this problem. So valid concerns, and we already started talking about.
I know, I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of it.
Yep. So please share your thoughts with me, and we're working on it.
I know Commissioner Constantine spoke a little bit about this Tunnel to Tower 5K race that took place this Saturday in the city of Altamont. I know many of us were there. The reenactment of that 5K race to symbolize the running through the Battery Tunnel in New York, then to the towers and up the towers, I can't even fathom individuals that actually did it, or it was truly, it's amazing. People don't realize how long that tunnel really is. It's one of the longest tunnels ever been built. I'm serious. And limited air circulation. And then to run through that tunnel, then it's about a third of a mile to the tower, and then up the Twin Towers with full bunker gear. That's boots, pants, jacket, hat, equipment, is truly, truly, to say it's amazing, it's an understatement. And to see them enact this every year, I really encourage people to go out there and cheer these individuals on, to keep those individuals' stories alive, and to help the Tunnel to Tower Foundation and what they do for first responders as well as military personnel is truly, truly amazing. A lot has, I mean, it's just, you could talk about it forever. It's truly amazing. So I want to thank the city of Altamont as well as our firefighters and other firefighters who, and law enforcement who participated in it. It's truly an amazing story. So just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. Then the last thing that I have is, I know at the end of this month, we're going to bring back the Seminole Forever ordinance, which I truly support. And reading it, there are some gaps in it, I think, for either funding or making sure that it's fully vetted. And I wanted to know that, because we did tell the staff to bring it back to us, but I want to make sure that if there are gaps, that we work out those gaps ahead of time. And we may need a work session to make sure that when we do bring this to the citizens in a full public hearing, that everything is vetted out so that it's truly understood what needs to happen and how it's going to happen. I didn't know how the rest of you felt about that. Commissioner Lockhart.
So I don't remember if it was the last board meeting or the board meeting before last, but I recall bringing this up.
You did.
In that we needed to probably set an opportunity for discussion about the penny sales tax in light of Seminole Forever coming up in the funding mechanism, because that was one of the gaps that we did identify. Certainly initially, Commissioner Constantine, I think, has had some conversations with staff that he feels he's identified some funds, but I think a holistic conversation is absolutely warranted. I think it's imperative that we schedule that discussion, because we can't start collaborating and giving direction until the five of us are all on the same page. So I think it's great that we're talking about having that discussion.
So the question that I have is, do we want to go right to read the ordinance and for adoption, or do we want to have a work session? I think there's a work session is pertinent, but I don't know how the rest of you feel.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would
It's
concur
huge.
with that.
Yes.
Certainly.
Mr. Applegate, just I'll get to you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Applegate, what do you, because in the conversation that we had, you said I needed to bring it up here.
Well, if there's 3 or 4 of you who want that, then obviously that's my job to set it. Melanie, what, is it October that's available?
Yes, October 18th.
And that's.
Melanie, can you come down here to the microphone, please? I'm sorry, Mr. Applegate.
While she's coming down, can I say something?
Absolutely.
All of us have, our legal department has been working on this. We agreed in principle on the 14 points that we had discussed at the previous meeting. It's, I think, imperative that we do this well in advance of the election, because I think that's what the intent was, and that's what I think it's important for the citizens. If we wanted to have elongated discussion of this, I don't see why we can't do it in the context of the commission meeting. And if there are things that we want to direct the staff to go back to and change as a consensus, that would be fine. But to postpone it until we can have a work session, I think is a disservice to what we have agreed upon previously. I would like to bring it up on the 27th as we had discussed, and if then there are problems or concerns that we need to change and we have a consensus to do that, and the citizens have the right to be here and look at it, then I think we should do it then. But to postpone it for a work session until further notice, I would be opposed to. The 18th of October is what she's talking about, which means that then we would not have the time to pass it before the election, or potentially. I don't see why we can't bring it up on the 27th. We all have, that's 2 weeks from now. We all have plenty of time to look at it. It's not that long. I've been looking at it as they've been going along. I know that the rest of you have through discussions with the staff, and I think that we can look at it on the 27th, and if we have problems with it, then we can ask the staff to bring forth changes and bring it back the next meeting. But to postpone it until a work session in October, I have serious problems with that.
Commissioner Zimbo.
Of course, reminder, I'll be remote on the 27th because of family matters, but my intent will be to be there. That said, I think what I'm hearing, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, because there's been this multiple discussion. I think there's 2 things here. I think there's the Seminole Forever, which we've all seen and legal has been working on and drafting and tweaking and so forth. But then there's the discussion about the 1-cent sales tax. And I think those are 2 different things.
They are.
I understand that there's been discussion on that perhaps the 1-cent sales tax may be utilized as part of Seminole Forever. But I truly do believe those are 2 separate. So I'm not sure what we're asking for. We're asking for a work session on both of those, or are we asking for just Seminole Forever? I think is what we're talking about. If it's just Seminole Forever, then I don't necessarily need a work session. If it's 1 cent sales tax, then I would absolutely agree we need a work session, 100%.
Commissioner Lockhart.
So I see that they're two different issues, but I don't know how we decouple a great concept, and yet we haven't coalesced around a funding mechanism to the dollar amount that we need in order for it to truly be a successful program down the road. I mean, Seminole Forever, by its name, is forever. So it's a pretty darn big endeavor, and I think for me, I'll just speak for myself, I want very much to support it. I do support it, but it's hard for me to vote to support something without knowing how we're going to pay for it forever. So the funding for me has to be a part of the conversation. So I understand that sales tax is a much bigger animal, but that's why I wanted to at least start to talk about it, to know if that was even on the table for a funding mechanism for Seminole Forever, because I don't see anything else big on the horizon in terms of revenue that would help support that program in perpetuity.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Constantine.
one of the 14 points was that we would look at the funding in 2 years. We would establish it, which we allowed this, not re-look at it, not we, in the ordinance, I believe the staff is going to bring forth funding mechanism, but at the same time, there was a discussion which we put in to the plan that there would be a reevaluation of the funding, because we knew that the sales tax was coming, but we are not prepared at this point as to whether it's going to be traditionally as we have done it, or if there might be other things. And that was going to be something that was discussed, as the chairman indicated, in January, as we start moving towards the sales tax. But I believe that the staff is prepared to bring forth funding for this, at least for the next 2 years.
So my question would be from where?
So,
That's what they're going to tell us.
no, they're not.
No, that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, they are. Have you guys read the ordinance?
Oh, yeah, I have.
Okay.
It says they
I'm
are.
raising my hand.
You can, Commissioner.
So the
I've read it.
fourth whereas says that we're going to fund it, and then there's a funding section, and it says the county shall allocate 6% of its general fund coming from its non-ad valorem revenues, but excluding grants, charges for the services, and transfers to Seminole Forever. The county may also use, upon the approval of the Tourism Development Council, tourism development funds. Has to be approved by the county attorney's office. And then it says it will be reevaluated every year, blah, 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 blah. So it's every year, not every 2 years, and it stipulates what we're doing in the first year, almost to the penny.
And it's got provisions for reserve.
Non-ad valorem, it's out of the reserve. Yeah, it's out of the reserve.
Trips for reserves on the general fund and otherwise, which staff would have, they would do every budget year based on the previous collection from the previous
I didn't
year.
want to get into this discussion in great detail because there's even more questions I have about that
Right.
non-ad valorem tax.
Sure.
And I really think it's prudent that we talk about it, because I'd love to even look at an impact fee, because that's realistic.
And we've got to start somewhere, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not saying we don't start somewhere.
And I think we started when we put it forth at the commission on the 27th. And if there are things that I don't see where a long conversation of this is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. We are doing something unique and groundbreaking here. And I think that the staff has done an incredible job in putting this together. And I think that they're prepared to bring forth this to the commission, and I think at the same time, we have made a commitment that I believe is very strong, that, we were going to bring this up, and we were going to try to get it done before the November election, and I think it's very important that we do that. And so why can't we bring it up? Why can't we put it on the 27th? And if then there is consensus to have a work session after that, because for some reason there's still multiple questions, then we can do that.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Commissioner Constantine, what's the issue with the November election? Why is this related to that?
Well, if you recall, it was related to the thing, to the referendum from the beginning. This was in lieu of the referendum, which would have been done in November. So I think if you look at it, I think it's very incumbent upon us that we do this in a timely fashion. The September 27th, that's 2 weeks from now. All of you have been talking to the staff about it. I don't see why we have to postpone it from that for a work session. Can we not do in the commission meeting a discussion of this, an open discussion of this while we have during the public meetings?
So here's my concern with that, is that you're hearing enough questions now that we feel we need to perhaps have a work session. My concern is if we put this as an agenda item to vote up or down on the 27th, and there are enough questions that it has to be postponed, that looks worse than if we say right now that this deserves the full attention of spending perhaps more than an hour or two on this particular topic, because the tentacles reach far beyond just Seminole Forever, because of the money that would be pulled from the reserves, because of the other funding implications. If the community perceives that as kicking the can down the road, I would hate for that to be the case. I don't feel that making a fast decision is the best decision. I want to feel really good that all 5 of us are on board, we all have our questions answered, and we're moving forward together.
Commissioner Herr?
I would agree with that, and I would also say it's more cumbersome to the citizens to come on the 27th in force, sit and wait for us to talk through it. More than likely, we're going to end up in a work session. Not going to want to come to the work session. They're going to want the work session to be publicized. What do you call it? Zoomed.
Yeah, Zoom.
All of that good stuff, and then we're going to drag them all back to the next meeting. I would rather do our homework in advance and then have most of the citizens will come to the regular meeting and take their input one time and not take them out of work twice.
And the reason I brought this up, because I am having questions about the budgetary items, where the actual money comes from. I would love to talk about a dedicated impact fee, but I can't talk to you all about it.
Right.
Because it's not a public hearing. I can't talk to you about the red line, green line. I can't talk to you about all that stuff. Can't talk to you about the tourism fund. Can't talk to you about the rebuilding the turfs at Boomba. Can't talk about that. And that's why there's gaps that I really believe a work session is needed. Then we have one commissioner, and he's told us ahead of time, he's going to be here in Zoom. I mean, he's not, I'm okay with you doing that, but be prepared.
My apologies, my daughter decided to get married, but...
I'm not trying to pick on anyone.
I was outvoted on all that.
I understand that.
The dress is fabulous, though.
Stop it.
But I just want to make sure that when we bring something to the community, it's not half-baked with a bunch of gaps in it. That's my concern. Because, I mean, if you want to have that, I'm prepared to do that.
Commissioners, my concern, please.
And again, I love Seminole Forever. I want it to happen.
Then can we talk about maybe having a work session as part of the meeting of the 27th, as opposed to, you used the word kicking down the, and I know you said we're not, but instead of going it in October 18th, I mean, the meeting, as I understand, is not that long, just like this one hasn't been. And I would say that,
almost 4 o'clock.
Yeah, it's still, yeah, we're used to later than that. And we got out before 12 o'clock. But I'm just saying, I think that is incumbent upon us doing the action and doing it as soon as we can. So if we can do a part of work session on the 27th, I'm happy with doing it as a work session.
Mr. Applegate, what would you recommend?
I would recommend that. We advertised it, and to defend legal, I will say this. They're to be commended for turning this around the way they did, and as you all instructed us to do. We went ahead and advertised it because we were told to do it for the second meeting in September. it's a good ordinance, but there are, as Commissioner said, it's comprehensive, and it deserves that consideration. I see no problem in having a work session on the 27th, if you don't.
That's fine with me.
I hate for you to listen.
Well, I understand, but again, you can't change daughters' plans of getting married.
And you'll be on Zoom and you can bring your.
Well, I will be.
It's your call.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I would like to do the work session. I have not made the connection between our commitment to doing this and the election day. I just seriously am not drawing that connection. I would rather have you in the room than not in the room,
I would agree.
particularly for a work session. I believe that the agenda for the 27th is probably already baked. And so now I see folks feverishly texting each other, so I might be onto something here.
Change the agenda, we're all messed up.
That little simple thing that we just did and county manager graciously agreed to sends ripple effect through the organization. I think doing it in October and doing it extremely well is the best idea that's on the table. And I don't necessarily know that folks thought that we would have this nailed down by Election Day. I really don't.
Okay, so there's consensus. Do we need a motion or just consensus, Mr. Applegate?
Consensus is fine. I prefer a motion at this point.
Can we have a motion then?
I move to have a work session on October 18th, if I have that right, that date right.
Is there a second to the motion?
For Seminole Forever?
For Seminole Forever.
We already, I'm sorry.
Let me just,
I think there's already a work session
is.
on the schedule
I
for
think that's
October 18th,
correct.
so this would be,
Melanie?
I don't know
Please,
what
I don't
other
mean that-
items are already scheduled for that work session, so we're not creating a new meeting. We are not. We are, so can you
What
run
day
through
are
what's
you
on the
suggesting,
18th?
Melanie?
Correct, Melanie Cooks,
Tuesday the
Assistant
18th.
County Manager. October 18th, in the morning, we will be having the Wekiva Basin Study, as well as the Transportation Mobility Plan. Then there's a break, we'll be having mayors and managers here, and then when we come back in the afternoon, we can spend the afternoon on this topic.
Just so you
Commissioner
know, I
Zimmer.
probably cannot be here on the 18th in the afternoon. I'm sorry, but I have a commitment myself on that day. Can we not, I'm talking about the motion because it did get a second, correct? Can we not at least try to do something on the 27th and work on it? I don't see why we are kicking it all the way for another month. We have it already advertised. The staff has it prepared. They've sent it out. There are questions that you can ask, to the staff, and we can talk about it openly on the 27th. And, if we need more time, then we give it more time. I don't see the problem with us at least starting the process on the 27th.
Commissioner Zimbarrow?
so my take is all encompassing, I believe. But to me, I think this is an important enough issue. My sense is everybody on this dais desires to see this program succeed. I think we've all, in one way, shape, or another, have made references or commitments to there's a benefit of conservation to our future generations, to our community, not just for a short period of time, for long periods of time. And if we need more time, and my fellow commissioners need more time to feel comfortable how we get there, within reason, I don't have a problem having that dialogue and finding everybody to the right place, if that's what it takes. We've seen the red line, we've seen drafts. I've had conversations myself with staff. I mean, I'm fairly comfortable where things are right at the moment, but I'm happy to hear my fellow commissioners if there's something they're not clear on or don't believe, or maybe you want to look at other alternatives, I'm happy to have that conversation.
Melanie, can you come to the podium, please? Commissioner Constantine said he's on a conference. I'm not going to the meeting on the 18th, National Association of Regional Councils. He won't be here. Is there any other days that we have available?
Well, let me ask you this. Could we swap the stuff around? Can we do in the morning? Are you available in the
He won't
morning
be
of the
here
18th?
all day.
No, I can make the morning.
You can make the
Okay.
morning? Okay.
So maybe we'll get with the two consultants and see if they can do theirs in the afternoon.
If we can do Seminole Forever in the morning, that would work for, I believe he's telling us that would work for him.
I'm saying I could make it on October 18th in the morning. I'm just again asking you, why can't we at least start the process on the 27th? I mean, we had a discussion of Sunrail, which had multiple questions previously, and today we came up without much discussion on a consensus. I'm just saying the fact of the matter, to start the process on the 27th, who is that hurting? Who has an objection? We have questions? Fine. Let's start the process of asking those questions. If we have to make it into a work session on the 27th, fine. If we have to postpone it on the 27th, fine. But what's the problem in starting the process on the 27th and seeing if we can come up with answers?
October 11th.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you're hearing is that because this is an important issue, and I know you really want this on the 27th, and I feel like maybe there are some commitments or something out there that you're feeling you need to, I don't know. But
It's advertised.
but we advertise things all the time, and we pull things from the dais, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want to do a bait and switch. We don't want to say we're advertising something and that we're going to vote on something, and then all of a sudden say, oh, no, just kidding, we're not actually voting on it, because that is worse, in my opinion. We were talking about communication with the community and transparency. I think this is so critical, and Commissioner Zember was taking a break, but...
He's got to go to the restroom.
Yeah.
He did explain.
Yeah, it's okay. I didn't need to know why, but for him to not be here for the conversation, I think would be unfortunate. I think all of us would want to be able to be here for this conversation. It's that important. It is a legacy project. It is a legacy item, as you well know. And so for all of us to have the opportunity to be present for the discussion, I think is important. And again, one of the things that Commissioner Zember asked, what would some of the things be that my fellow commissioners have concerns about? I'm concerned, after talking with staff, that perhaps all of the properties that we think may be available to us to purchase for this vast amount of money either don't meet the criteria that was previously established or is not for sale.
Oh, we don't have criteria.
Well, so there was criteria discussed.
There's plenty of criteria.
There's plenty of criteria. So one of the things that I feel like we would need to talk about is, if we don't come up with, what's the backup plan? If we don't come up with all of the property based on the criteria, based on what's actually for sale, or what might be for sale, would we contemplate purchasing pieces of property in the non-rural area? Would there be a provision and an opportunity for doing some conservation, some urban-type conservation? That would be one of my questions that I would pose and talk about with my colleagues. That's work session worthy. That's not an agenda voted on item.
But Commissioner, with all due respect, those questions, we can start getting those answers on the 27th. I don't see why we have to delay it another month. And yes, I do believe that we have, we said when we first supported that, get it as soon as possible.
Commissioner Zembauer won't be here on the 27th. That was what I started with. I started with, this is such an important legacy project that for Commissioner Zembauer to not be present would be really unfortunate for us to rush this through under some auspices of having it done before the election that is not even relevant. And so I don't know. If I was in Commissioner Zembauer's shoes, I would want to be here.
I'd actually like to call the question. I think I had a motion and a second.
We do, we can call the question. I have no problem doing that.
And there are criteria.
Yeah,
So
there.
we'll talk about those criteria during the work session. So just for clarification, Melanie, we're talking about doing it in the morning of the 18th. And I believe that's what the motioner agreed and the seconder agreed. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign?
No.
Motion passes 4-1.
And just a point of clarification for the the September 27th meeting, which has been advertised, we will now put in that meeting is being continued to some time in the future after the work session, just so.
But you will notify people of the work session in that modification?
Yes.
Great.
And I would just hope, and I think, any questions that each of us have, that we would reach out to staff between now and then to satisfy or at least get additional questions that we may need based on the answers we receive, so we can move efficiently through this best we can.
So who's going to be presenting this work session? I just want to make sure who's going to be doing that.
It'll be the county manager's office.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. All right. We all understood? Okay. All right. We'll go on end of my report. We'll now go on to future agenda items. None are requested. We'll go to public comments for non-related agenda items. Shaney Beach.
Bill Hyde.
Take your time, Bill.
Who's next after that?
Katrina Shaddix.
And after that?
None.
Okay.
Trying to hurry, because I know y'all are tired, and you know we are.
We got to be back here to talk about tax tonight.
I got something to say about that. My name is Bill Hyde. I live at 2379 Audley Street in Oviedo, and I know with Florida Forever, Sunrail, 5 Points, all those humongous issues, this is going to sound petty, but to some people it's not. When we came to the parking lot this morning, the usual 2 places were taken for clergy and business spotlight. Understood. There's also 3 new permanent disabled parking, just reserved parking places. Parking lot's full. Some of us are not real good at walking. Those spots were not occupied during the session. When we came out, they were still empty. We left and took a break. We come back. Nobody's using those places, but we still had to go elsewhere to park. I don't know what the purpose of it is, but I know it's very difficult for us. I don't use a handicap space because I try to park that way, but I will probably have to start using my handicap or my veterans place. I don't think that's a good idea. Second thing, and I'm going to try to make this fast. Y'all were talking earlier about planning with other cities. Whatever happened to the Oviedo JPA? It's not my fight, but whatever happened to that Oviedo JPA? Third thing, and I'm not being a smart aleck, yes I am, but if I have to give my name and address for the record, I think everybody should have to. Thank you very much.
And for the record, Bill, I think some of us have been asking for that JPA with Oviedo, and our staff has, I think, informed us they have no interest or have not furthered their interest, if that's a fair analogy. Is that fair?
That is fair. Tricia Johnson.
Tricia Johnson, Deputy County Manager. I'm not here to speak about the Oviedo JPA, let me be clear on that. The spots that Mr. Hyde referenced, we have 3 employees who utilize the handicap spots in the parking lot next to building. They have handicap placards and are allowed to use them. We have 4 handicap spots, so we certainly want to make sure our employees are able to, those that need it are able to walk in the building and be close to an entrance, but don't want the majority of those spots utilized so that most of the members of the public who also have handicap spots don't have them available. So we worked with risk management to create 3 additional spots for those employees that are reserved because they do have the right to utilize a handicap location. So they're across the lot on the other side, and you will see the reserved signs for those 3 employees to park. 2 of them actually will not be long-term. It will be as they recover from some procedures, and in the next few months, they should no longer need them. But for the time being, we did want to accommodate them as well as accommodate members of the public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Katrina Shaddix.
Before Katrina, Rebecca.
Good afternoon again, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. Regarding the Oviedo JPA, we had engaged with them and we had some initial meetings and they did express interest in updating and we had an old JPA with them that expired and they have expressed interest in entering into a new JPA. However, they are working on updates to their comprehensive plan and they're also working on a mobility fee and they're engaged in a mobility fee study. So they wanted to accomplish those things first before moving forward with the JPA.
And what about Winter Springs?
Winter Springs initially had stated that they weren't interested, but I have received an email within the last week from their new planner saying that they would like to enter into a JPA. So we'll start talking to them about that again.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Katrina Shattuck.
Katrina Shattuck, 1011 Seneca Oaks Trail, Geneva, Florida, 32732. Is it okay if I have 6 minutes as Executive Director? I only need 1 minute for my stuff, but there's an email I received from a resident, and it's a pretty important matter that I need to read on the record. First thing, thank you for having the workshop. Commissioner Zimbauer deserves to dedicate 100% of his time to his daughter's wedding, and he deserves to be here to talk about that very important program. Also, the rush to get it through to election was only when we were asking for it to go to the ballot for a vote. That was the only rush. Now that we don't have the option to vote on that, take all the time you need. Make it right, make it perfect, and make it work. And make sure it's not like the Florida Forever program, which has never given the full amount that was voted on by the residents. I think the state owes us over $1 billion in money to purchase land. So hopefully the Seminole Forever program will be better than that. And about the email, this is from a resident named Sally Norton. Bless you. Bless you. And I think she is in Commissioner Hurst, and I can forward this to you as well. And she writes, "Good morning, Ms. Shattuck. It was recommended to me that I reach out to you as you may be able to help me with my issue. I cannot. That's why I'm talking to y'all about it. I have lived in Seminole County since 1994 and for the past 5 or so years at 8053 South Sullivan Lake Drive in Sanford. Our home backs up to a soccer field owned by Seminole County, part of Lake Sylvan Park. It is our understanding that in recent years this soccer field in particular has been leased to Orlando City Soccer. Over the past 12 months there have been some changes to this field in particular, which include a large oak falling and being removed, the clearing of all shrubs and brush along the fence line, and Orlando City Soccer taking over managing the field, which has yielded an increase in the amount of time they run their sprinklers. This is now impacting our property. There is a swale that runs along the east side of the soccer field, and all of the runoff from the field drains into that swale. The swale has a low spot, which now sends all of the water through our fence in one area. At little water here, I don't get that. A little water here is no problem, but now we are seeing anytime it rains, the water floods rapidly through the fence across our lawn and is now making its way under our concrete pad foundation. I would like to stress that it's a significant, fast-moving amount of water. It continues to drain onto our property for 36 hours after it has rained. So these days, it's running nonstop. Our concern is that each week it gets further and further under our concrete pads, and soon it will work its way under our home. We are concerned about the integrity of our foundation being damaged, walls cracking, and possibly a sinkhole. In the past couple weeks, we are now also experiencing chemical runoff. We are getting green algae as well as white foam residue. As we are on well water, this brings with it a whole other set of concerns about the integrity of our drinking water. I'm reaching out to you because I've been trying for more than 2 months now to get help from the county. In the beginning, I was just seeking a meeting with Orlando City Soccer and Seminole County at the site to see how much we could change the direction of the water to run out to the swale on the side of the road rather than it going under my house. Sadly, I have been unsuccessful. I will say Public Works and the lady who answers the phone at Leisure Services have been most helpful. Unfortunately, Leisure Services answers to Bill Pandos, I believe, and have emailed him, and he has received an escalated work order from Leisure Services. I received a call back from the lady at Leisure Services on 8/16/22 telling me Mr. Pando said I have to take it up with Orlando City Soccer. We have spoken to Orlando City Soccer and have been told they are unhappy with the drainage of the field and it's Seminole County's problem, and we need to take it up with Seminole County. I have also spoken and emailed Mr. Potter over at Code Enforcement, and he suggested I emailed him with the details and he would see if he could share my info with some different divisions of the county, but we've heard nothing back. I'm really at a loss at this point. We had an issue in front of our house. We called Public Works, and within 24 hours, they were on site, dug a swale, and fixed the issue in 1 hour. I was so impressed and grateful to them, which is why I'm so shocked that no one even wants to talk about the issue we are having now behind our house. This is our home, our one home. We are not snowbirds. We do not live anywhere else for part of the year. Every time it rains, my nerves are shot because I know the water is moving under the ground closer and closer to my home. My father is almost 80 years old, and if the unthinkable happens and the sinkhole opens up under our home, will we have time to escape? What is happening to the quality of my water now, and all the chemicals from the soccer field are ending up on our property? I am reaching out to you in hopes that you can assist me in addressing this issue before it becomes a huge problem. I've been trying for 2 months. I really feel with the daily rains we are getting, we are running out of time. Thank you in advance. So that's what I have to say about that. And I will forward the email to...
You don't need to.
No need to?
Yeah. Send it to Commissioner Herr. Thank you very much for your input.
I have my hand up.
I'm getting to you in a minute. I'm just thanking her to say thank you.
Good?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Now I'll come to you. Thank you, Commissioner Herr, for waiting. Commissioner Herr.
I got the same exact email last week, minus a sentence or two at the end. It's verbatim. We are already working with staff. We have 2 departments involved. I was out there on Sunday. I would be the red Acura that was parked in her front yard, and the woman in the blue dress with the rain boots on, probably trespassing on her property. I have pictures of her yard, her side yard, her driveway. It was less than 24 hours post a very heavy rain, and the driveway was for the most part dry with some water on it. I could see no residue. I am sharing that with staff, so we are heavily engaged in this issue. So thank you.
And I would just make an observation, and I appreciate Ms. Shattuck's sharing that long-winded email, but it may be beneficial in the interest of staff and the public that you reach out to the district commissioner to understand if anything's happening whatsoever before we go on this long diatribe of what somebody put in an email and how some private citizen may help them versus somebody in staff and so forth. I would just ask kindly that Ms. Shattuck consider that. So you have all the information.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lockhart.
Completely different topic, something that I neglected to mention for my district report, and I would like
Go right ahead.
direction from the board if it's okay. The rest of this week, I'll be at the Innovation and Policy Conference for the Florida Association of Counties, and part of the policy conference aspect is when different counties have items that they would like to be addressed as part of the legislative priorities for the association. Just this afternoon in our conversations, there were two things that I noticed that could be relevant, and while these were not presented to them as a part of that policy committee, they do take things from the floor. So if the board would be interested, I would be happy to ask if the Florida Association of Counties would be interested as a group in looking at the MSBU provision and how it might impact all of the counties with cities within their jurisdictions. That's something I'd be happy to bring up.
Please do. I think it's a valid point.
Fine.
Okay,
Good.
is that all right?
Good.
Okay. Can't promise anything, but certainly don't want to bring it up without consensus from the board. The other thing that has come up in the past, that did not come up today, is the requirement in state statute that counties collect business tax receipts. I think when Commissioner Zembauer and I were first elected, we said, why do we bother collecting this? And can't we just say, we don't want to collect this $25 or $35 or whatever it is? And the response that we were given at the time was, we are mandated by Florida statute. It says that we must collect the business tax receipt. And so one of the items that I thought would potentially be worth bringing up is asking if we could change the must to a may. It would be permissive as opposed to mandatory. Is that something that the board would be interested in my mentioning?
Commissioner Zimbow.
I absolutely would, from the standpoint of the reality is, as we most of us probably know, is that due process and equal treatment under the law. It's not, not everybody's paying it. So I pay it, you don't, you pay it, he doesn't,
I appreciate you put me in that category.
and nobody's following up to ensure that it's actually happening. So it's on the honor system, really, is what it is. I mean, so I would support that 100%.
I see no issue with you talking about it.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I will let you all know when we get back from the conference how it goes.
Any other requests?
No, sir.
Anyone else in the audience would like to speak to the board?
I have an item, Commissioner.
I'll get you in a second. Just like to close public input for future agenda items, and I'll go back to the board. Mr. Polchipak.
Just following up on the AGO for the Lake Management MSBU, as part of the AGO process, there needs to be authorization from the board to proceed. So included with your prior direction, I just want to state for the record that that would include having the chairman sign a letter that the board has authorized us to proceed with.
That was my understanding. I believe there's consensus for that, Paul.
Okay, just wanted to have that on the record, that you will
Yes.
be authorized to sign a letter on behalf of the board.
Anything else?
Not at this time.
Anything else, Mr. Applegate?
No, sir.
Okay. This meeting is now adjourned.